Hi everyone, welcome to the Mommentators. We are all real moms discussing tough topics head on. And this first week, we'd just like to introduce ourselves, get to know each other a little bit. I'm gonna start. I'm Andrea. I have a beautiful little 2.5-year-old. I'm actually from Utah and new to New York, and just kind of figuring this whole city out. It's kind of crazy. Yeah.
My name is Lynette. I have a 3-year-old daughter. I am from Florida, and I'm enjoying living in the city and raising my daughter here.
I'm Kelly. I have 2 little boys, 1.5 and 3, and I'm from New Jersey, but I really went kind of native living in New York for a really long time, and now I'm back in New Jersey, and I'm happy to be there, but I'm surprised to find myself there again, actually. So.
Yeah, I've kind of a similar situation. Anyway, I'm Liz, and I have 2 kids. I have an 8-year-old daughter and a 5-year-old son. I kind of came like Brooklyn to New Jersey, raised in Jersey, but straddled the city because my father had a bakery. I grew up around a bakery in the city, so I was in the city a lot. So I kind of straddled both worlds.
Well, that's awesome because that's our topic today, is kind of discussing living and raising family, raising kids in New York City versus outside of the city, suburbs, far, far away. What do you guys think?
I think that raising a child in the city is all about balance, balance, balance. And for me, I've had to learn how to balance covering my child from the outside, but also keeping her open-minded in all the various different types of people, cultures, and wonderful things that the city has to offer. Because once again, it is a city. It's one of the biggest cities in the world. And raising a child is something very delicate. So you do have to find that balance. Right. And I think that for her, she's a multi-ethnic child. It's important for me to have her in a diverse, open-minded, multifaceted society and environment. And so I think the city is wonderful for that.
Do you think she wouldn't get that in Florida, where you're from?
Or? Oh, absolutely not. I'm from real Florida, not Miami, Florida, but old school vacation, not Florida. Miami, Florida. Right. You say you're from Florida, people are like, oh, you're from Miami, Orlando. No, I'm from old Florida, where it's either black or white, you're middle class. No, she wouldn't get the culture nor the diversity.
Culture. I mean, I'm free to admit my son would not have the same experience if he grew up in American Fork, Utah.
Yeah, there are a lot of great places.
Really, honestly, American Fork.
The name of the town?
American Fork.
Wow.
It's great.
Wow.
You guys, I'm not mocking it. It's beautiful,
and
wonderful.
It's just
but
a
yeah,
different
it's
lifestyle.
American Fork.
Wow.
What does that even mean?
South of it,
you
yeah,
eat
like
with, or
south
a fork
of it.
in the road?
Like it's forks.
Fork in the road is what I'm suspecting, but south of it, like 20 minutes, is Spanish Fork, so I'm not sure.
Oh, wow,
I
interesting.
know, right?
In
We like our
Utah.
utensils.
Yeah. I think that, my kids were a multi-international family. My husband's English, and we lived in the city together before having kids, and he never wanted to move to America, and anything outside New York City he considered America. He wanted to
I can understand that.
he really wanted to be.
Let's be honest, don't New Yorkers really
Yeah,
do
they
that?
kind of
America, so
like-
that's what he thought. He was like, I'm in New York, I'm not in America. And we heard that, don't worry, you'll be safe if you move out to a certain area of New Jersey, because so many, not only Brits live there, like, he's British, but it's very international. And that was really...
Safe meaning what? Safe from crime and violence?
No.
Or safe from America?
He wanted to be safe from feeling that he wasn't losing his culture. It's really important for him to feel that he's still British. He really wants to preserve, he's very much, he would say his religion is football, which we call soccer.
Okay.
He is obsessed with his soccer team. He loves his tea and his Ribena and his,
What's Ribena?
Ribena is like a concentrated black currant drink that is like a juice, but there are certain things that are very inherently British that feel like home to him, and he didn't plan on living here. He came here for me, and so he needed to preserve.
So you have to be Miss America.
Do
you have to do everything. You have to protect him. You have to show him. You have to represent
so I tried that.
the entire country for
I
us.
actually, when we first moved to New York, I created a website called Brits in New York to make him comfortable.
That's amazing.
But anyway, we moved out there, and it was what's great is that it is very international, and he realized that you can live outside New York City and get the city vibe, the urban vibe, and that international feel.
See, that's what I love about living in the city with my son. Is this is an experience he can't have anywhere else. He can't have the culture, the food, the people, the experiences anywhere else. I've lived in the suburbs, and I love it. I love what it has to offer. I love that in my parents' neighborhood, I could just go out and play night games, and we didn't have to lock our doors, and we were able to just go and knew all our neighbors and everything like that. But this
Can you give an example of a night game?
A night game? You don't know what that is? Like
about?
steal the flag? Or,
at night.
Yeah,
okay.
like you go out
like
into
flashlight tag.
Yeah, and that kind of stuff, and all the
what it
kids come in. We live in a little
Do you
cul-de-sac
think it still
and
is like
all that
that
kind of
now,
stuff.
or is that
Oh, it is. I mean, I go back all the time, and it's still that same. Everybody knows each other, and everybody's welcome. And there's like neighborhood dog that goes and jogs with you when you go on your. You know what I mean?
I can totally relate to what Andrea's saying.
But the experience here can only be had here, and that's what I'm grateful for.
New York City is its own country, but to relate to what you're saying, when you go back home to more rural places or more country places, people still knock on your door when you're in town and say, hey, I heard you're in town, how you doing? Oh, I heard your mother was sick, here's a plate. And those are the things you miss when you're in the city, because people in the city are so busy, sometimes they forget that reciprocity.
Well, it freaks me out. Now that I lived in New York for so long, and I loved living in New York. I lived in Manhattan, I lived in Brooklyn. When I moved to Brooklyn, I thought, this is it. I found the place where I can live for the rest of my life. And then as soon as my children were born, I realized that I didn't like parenting in the city, simply because of the space issue. I think that, I agree with everything that everyone's saying about how incredible to grow up in the city or near the city where your experience is of so many different cultural, like if you live in one area, there's the culture for your area. Well, what's the culture of New York? It's every culture. I mean, it's just like you have to be so worldly, growing up here. But
the space is an issue. Space is a compromise you have to make.
Because what I realized when my children were born is that my home was no longer my home. It was no longer my own personal space. I was sharing my space, and my home had to be a workplace. Because they're so messy and needy, and the demand. I mean, you're working around the clock, particularly before they're even sleeping through the night, and it just wasn't cute anymore. I lived in this sort of quaint brownstone apartment that was like quirky and groovy, and all the quirkiness was what made me angry. I couldn't. It needed to be efficient.
Right.
Did you also find though that I mean, you're both in the city, and we're outside the city a bit now, and I found that there was a lot more judgment with city moms, and some of them weren't even around, like they had their nannies, but they still were so much more judgmental. Like you had to do everything had to be organic. You had to breastfeed for 2 years, no plastic toys, and I found that maybe that was a Brooklyn thing.
No, you hit the nail on the head. You're opening up a can of worms
now. You know what I mean? Like I moved out and I got a little space, and I didn't just get physical space. I got a little space from the judgment.
But I think all it is because it's concentrated. Like if you had that many people anywhere, you'd get these hyper active, you know what I mean? When you put that many people living on top of you, you're gonna have all these opinions. It's gonna feel like it's right on top of you. You probably have the same amount per capita, of the same opinions, but they're just spread out.
Everyone's in their own house, and they're
correct.
That's nice, but you're talking about, there is an undercurrent in New York City, amongst New York City moms, where mothering is a business. It's almost unorganic. What are you going to feed your child? What's the newest trend? Nut-free, gluten-free, no peanuts. And I think
that's too much for me.
You know what? There is a pulse and a heartbeat in New York City, and I think that moms do it without even being aware of it. I got to do this. I have to do that. And so, like you said, half the time they're not even taking care of their own children. Someone else is doing it, or the nanny, but there's still this very type A helicopter parent. I have to be on top of things. But I think they don't even know they're doing it. Or they may, because it's so competitive here, but you do feel this angst that you get from other moms because they're trying so hard to keep on top of things.
And do you think it's not like that in Utah? Like, I'm curious, like, how are the moms
It's not
in Utah?
like,
it's not that way.
Right, okay.
Now she's commenting on Utah. She's like, let me tell you guys.
But I can relate.
Lynette would know all about you.
Listen, but isn't it weird that the two moms that are from the country, we live in this city and we see the perks of it, but we do realize that there are benefits of that country living that
Right, there's
easy,
one thing
breezy.
that I loved about living in New York so far is that I can just walk out and there's this thing and there's this mom that I'm meeting and there's this play date.
Yeah,
And
I miss that spontaneity.
We never have to plan anything, even though I'm a serious planner and he has a schedule, and we'll maybe get into that on another day, but he has a schedule and I know what's happening in his little world that I'm helping create. But we have a certain amount of time every day where we just go explore. And sometimes we may end up at this park alone, or sometimes we may end up at this museum, or sometimes we may end up
The accessibility is
of
great.
this,
The accessibility is great. But what you were saying, Liz, that for me, I perceive that there isn't that issue in other places. I think that there is something here in the
And I
city
have
where
to
you're
say,
pulsating really fast.
When I was, I lived in the city for the first 2.5 years with my older son.
That's
we
the
moved when he
magic
was
number,
about
by the
two
way,
and a
2.5.
half. Yeah,
it is.
but I feel like I saw that, but I didn't really feel it.
Yeah, I'm not getting
and
a
I
whole lot of
lived
pressure
in.
from it.
I don't. I mean, it's sort of. I guess it's there, but I
depends on the circles you're running
felt
into.
Like crowded
Yeah.
by it.
Yeah,
Because I
it
sort
also-
of feel like I didn't. I really thought that I was so ready to have kids, and I was still blindsided by the
Yeah,
experience.
yeah.
And I feel like it has been so important to just sort of stay connected. It's been so challenging to stay connected to myself that I
Yeah.
can't worry about what anybody else thinks
Yeah.
in a way that's really refreshing.
And I had-
That's a healthy
you
place.
have
Yeah.
to-
It is a healthy place.
like you get so blindsided, you have to stop. You have to be so focused on this other person and trying to keep your head above water and focus on your own self-care
It also
that
depends-
like worrying about what other people think. It's like,
And it
shut
depends
up.
on what age you have
Not
kids
you.
too. No,
Right.
like I felt that for the city, I had kids really young, and the women in my mom's group were like 10 years older. So I was like asking for their advice, and so I probably got too much of it,
yeah.
and it really, really didn't sit that well with me. Even though I tried to follow along because I was trying to understand everything so well. And now, I think if I was having kids now, I would probably push a lot of that out.
And that's an important fact. As a mother, once you know who you are and make a decision on how you're going to parent, that just opens the door and sets the pace for everything else when it comes to your mothering.
Well, and I feel like the
Absolutely.
minute that first child was born, I became like totally fierce. I was just like, can you believe
feel
what
the
I
same
just
way.
did? Can you, like, I was just like, I'm not taking any crap from anyone anymore, Like I had a baby out of my way.
Yeah.
And it's
Unite.
just,
Well, I think what we've established here is that no matter what, whether you're living in the city, in the suburbs, the motherhood is a connecting thing. Whether
It's
you agree with
universal.
it or not,
Yeah.
it's universal. It's something we can all connect with. And
Yeah.
I just hope that everybody knows that we're here for you. We're going to come back with some more hard-hitting topics. We're going to be here every week discussing these things,
Indeed.
and we can't wait to share this experience with you, you guys. Have a wonderful week. We'll see you later.